Dave Sinykin, who am I listening to?
This is Pepe Willie, 94 East, one of my dearest friends.
Oh, okay.
Guy who got Prince started back in the day.
What do you mean?
He heard Prince, who was like 13, 14 at the time, playing piano, and said, all right, I'll help you out. And he...
So what did he do?
He produced him and got him started, and brought in another buddy of mine to be his actual first manager, and got his band together, and put the whole thing together. In fact, he played a couple of Pepe's songs have original Prince, the very first stuff Prince ever put on vinyl or tape,
right?
Are stuff that Pepe owns. So he still licenses that music and puts it in his own music. And
no kidding. All right. So, I wonder if he's getting paid on that right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he is.
Good for him.
Checks the mailbox every now and then from all over the world as checks come in.
Right.
It's a pretty good deal. Allows him to play golf every day, which is not a bad life.
That's a great life.
Yes.
So you can only imagine there's some scenario out there where he doesn't quite believe in this 13-year-old Prince kid. Right? Or whatever, right?
I don't think there was. He couldn't believe what was coming out of this guy's fingertips at the time.
Yeah.
And saw the genius that was there, and it was all right in front of him. So he got him going.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah.
How long did they work together? Because eventually Prince, I imagine, outgrows him or goes a different direction.
Yeah,
he moved on from like everybody eventually.
He did. Yep.
Right?
Probably early to mid '80s. My buddy Owen, who was his first manager, I think took him through Purple Rain, and then at that point Prince said, "I can do this all myself now."
Yeah.
But they got him going. So, the whole got a bunch of buddies in the Revolution. Dr. Fink and Bobby Z, all those guys were all in my circle back in the day.
When are we going to get the Prince biopic?
That's got to come, doesn't it?
Right, doesn't it?
They have to find the right actor. They've probably got to find
somebody
the actor
short enough
first. Yeah, just that has that. That just has that something, that magnetism. Yes, short, but also, I don't know, that exudes that Prince.
Persona. The charisma that he had.
Exactly.
Which you can't quantify that. And 99% of us don't have it, but Prince did.
Yeah, 99.999. Yes, correct. Yeah, that'll come. We'll wait for that.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So we're talking Packers today? Is that what I heard?
No, not at all. Oh. No Packers. Although that's coming around eventually, right? We'll get there.
Yeah,
but we don't need to rush that. I don't think.
It's your show, man.
No. Well, it's PA show.
It might be happier conversation today.
Let's start with last night's game, and then I want to expand the conversation to the season more broadly, and maybe the series. So maybe we'll go tiniest last night, then let's do the series, then let's do the season.
Micro to macro.
Exactly. Okay. A totally deflated, maybe the worst playoff loss in the history of the franchise when you consider it was an elimination game, and you have every reason to put on the best possible face that you can here at home. Elimination game. You've got great players, a very good roster. You just beat Dallas. You've been competitive all the other games.
Yeah.
And you got obliterated from the get-go and had no response for 4 quarters.
It's not a good look, for sure. Unexpected, too, as you say. Every game was so competitive. You can go back to Game 6 of Denver and say, well, the Nuggets didn't expect to lose that game by 45 points either. These things happen. Look, this team got bulldozed by one of the best 2 players on the planet who took things into his own hands, and they had no response. So it was 18-18. Let's go back to the first quarter. It was 18-all. And then Dallas goes on a 17-1 run, I believe it was.
Yep, to finish the first, and they opened up. It was 18-18. The quarter finished 35-19.
Right. The Timberwolves got good looks. Nobody could make a shot. Nobody stepped up outside of Cat and Ant, which you absolutely have to have in a game like that. There are nights where when the team has 2 of the best 10 players in the world, they're going to be too much for you. You don't want it to happen on your own court. You don't want it to happen in an elimination game. You want to see that your team has answers. And unfortunately, that did not happen. But sometimes, Luka was unconscious in the first quarter.
Yeah, right. There was no defending him.
Sometimes all it takes is the one yokel in the first row who's waving a Kleenex at him saying, wipe your tears because you whine all the time.
Right.
And sometimes guys just look at that and go, okay, all right, that's all I needed. And so if that's what it took Luka to become just ridiculous, Steph Curry-like, stepping back from 33 feet and knocking it down.
From the logo.
Yeah, he's a spectacular offensive player. There's no question. And when he's in that groove, and you got Kyrie too, it's tough for any team to stop him. This is a a fifth seed in number only, Charch. I mean, they went 16-2 down the stretch. They were a team, once they made these trades midseason, that completely remade who they were. They were always thought of a offensive team with no real bite. They're soft. You could bang them around physically, and things got serious after those trades. They've remade their roster, and kudos to them because they took those two talents and found the right mix around them. And last night, I don't like the Wolves tend to not have answers when they get smacked in the face a little bit in game. Like they may have an answer the next game, but in game, I find that the coaching staff has a hard time reining things in and trying to settle everything down, and it just snowballed last night at the worst possible time. Nas, McDaniels, all the complimentary players, none of them stepped up in a huge moment. Look, Kyrie was, before Game 4, was 13-0 in closeout games. He is a great closer. It's tough to beat that guy. And the Wolves dealt him his first closeout loss in Game 4. To think you're going to do it 3 more times to him was probably unlikely.
Well, but, then losing McDaniels on the foul trouble early, because they'd switched McDaniels largely on Kyrie in Game 4, which is a very good decision.
Seemed like it, and on Luka.
And that's how they were working this game as well. And then you've got 2 instant fouls on McDaniels, and now he's out for most. And then he came back and he got another quick foul. Now he missed most of the first half.
And that's nothing new, Charch. That's been his MO all season throughout his career. He's got to figure out how to play this game without. And they're dumb. A lot of them are dumb fouls that you don't need to make. You're chasing, you're beating.
The half-court fouls.
Yeah, he and Cat, both of those guys, and they have to learn how to stay on the court. This is, unfortunately, the way it tends to go in the NBA. You don't just come out of nowhere and get to the finals. It looked like the runway had cleared.
The path looked like it was there.
Favored to win the series, right or wrong. They knew it was right there for them. But, man, that's a talented team. And to lose 5 out of 6 at home in the playoffs down the stretch, just so unusual. They were so good at home all season. Trent's always talked about how there's more pressure at home. There's the distractions, all the things that come with being at home and your people around you. He always loved being on the road for playoff games. And for a young team that hasn't been there, maybe those things are, that hits you harder because you do have lots of people wanting a piece of you. But to not be competitive last night is going to hurt those players for a long time and those coaches to think about how close they were and the fact that that game was taken away from them after the first quarter, basically, and they were dead in the water. Very tough pill to swallow, and it's going to be a long off season as we talk micro about last night. But, macro, I'm still bullish about what this team accomplished and what the future might hold.
Before we get to that, Dave.
I'm a half glass full kind of guy.
Yeah, I like that. Half of those early possessions that the Wolves had, they kept going to Rudy for offensive possessions through the first quarter, and I'm like, this is how your response is. This is what you're going to in the elimination game, is to keep feeding Rudy, and not like right under the basket so he can dunk it, right? So we're feeding him 8-10 feet out and hoping Rudy can do something with the ball, and he can't. He can't make those shots. He can't make the free throws. I don't understand how that was the game plan coming into this game.
You don't think it makes sense for Rudy to shoot more than anybody else in the first quarter?
No,
me either.
And set a personal all-time high with 7 field goals in a quarter.
Yeah,
attempted field goals.
Right. They put him in that high pick and roll. So when Ant comes off the pick and roll, and then Rudy now, they just ignore him. Trent's been saying for a while, put somebody else up there that's offensively minded. Set the pick and roll with Cat so that if they're going to roll and Cat's being left free, well, he can hurt you in a million ways. If you put Rudy up there and now he's fading, they're saying, please
take it,
put the ball into Rudy's hands. Another thing about not adjusting, that was not working. And we all know that Rudy is a very gifted basketball player, but it's mostly on one end of the court. He's more valuable offensively just to be around the basket and get your offensive boards and clear out space. To put the ball in his hands is just inviting disaster. And I would have liked to have seen them change that pick and roll a bit, put an offensive-minded player up there. If it's not working, don't keep going to it thinking it's going to work. But that was, again, after that first quarter, I was really tempted to watch something else. And actually, once the second half started and they went on like a 5-0 run, I turned it off. I couldn't watch what I was watching. It was just beyond ugly. Yeah, a lot of things need to be cleaned up.
Hey, Dave, what do you think Anthony Edwards learned in particular in this series? Like we saw in a Suns series, I mean, those third quarters games were over. Into the Nuggets series, you battle your way back. And just at 22, the way that we talked about him as Wolves fans and trying to already kind of measure him up to what we just saw in Luka and Kyrie, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are a pretty damn good duo in Boston as they're set to play in the finals. But what do you think Anthony learns in a series like this about what he needs to do to ascend? Is it diet, man? Like, what do you think about Anthony now that he has a summer to think about this?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I thought it was really instructive after the game where he said, look, I now realize when you're playing this deep into the playoffs that your body needs to be a certain way. I've never played this long. He's never played anywhere near this long. Mm-hmm. And look, he's a muscular, athletic, piece of work. He's a sculpture. He's fit, but he probably will look at himself and think, I could probably carry a few less pounds on this frame and still be the physical guy that I am. I think he was worn out. You're playing, very intensive games every other night now. It's not like you get 2 days off like earlier in the playoffs. You're playing every other night, and you're chasing around two really, really gifted offensive players, and you have to guard them. Your team can't have you lay off a guy like Luka does. Luka doesn't play defense. It's a rumor to him. He gets to take half the game off. Ant's got to chase Kyrie or Luka around her. He's got to chase Jamal Murray around her.
It's hard work.
It is hard work. So I think from that standpoint, he probably will realize that this is a marathon and he wants to be playing into the month of June. And we came one game away from playing a game in June for the first time in franchise history on Saturday. So that's one thing. I think he also learned, okay, I'm being talked about as a potential face of the NBA in the coming years. And once this Olympic happen, his notoriety is going to go up even more.
Yeah, which, by the way, I don't like that he's on the Olympic team.
Oh, it's a good thing that he's on the Olympic. I know it's going to wear him out, blah, blah.
Yes.
It's not that big of a commitment. It's a very talented team with a lot of guys. He's not going to play huge minutes. What playing for Team USA last summer did for him, he's talked about it. He learned so much about the game. Mm-hmm. Getting coached by Steve Kerr and being around those players is invaluable for a young guy, just to soak up that knowledge. Kobe talked about it for years after being a young guy in an Olympic team. So
okay. All right.
I understand your concerns. He needs time off. I get that.
I'm just looking at a guy who's clearly physically spent at this point, Anthony Edwards. And the idea that it's already a short off season in the NBA, right? It's like 4 months. The fact that he's going to divide that with the Olympics in the middle of it, Paris, right?
Yep.
Paris Olympics in the middle of this. I don't love. I'd love to see him just recharge. But I'm sure there are a lot of intangible benefits from being around these other world-class players.
No, for sure there are. And look, there's a lot of those medal qualifying games against countries you've never heard of with a million consonants.
Yeah.
He'll play like 6 minutes. Like they're not going to need him a lot until they get into the medal rounds. And then he'll play like 5 or 6 games, and then they'll practice a bit, but he'll be around amazing talent. And it's all good for him. I don't, if he was 30, okay, yeah, but he's 22. Like, give him 6 weeks off here or whatever it is to recharge, and he'll be ready to go out and represent the country. And I think it's going to be a big summer for Ant. I think Steve Kerr, he's talked about how he wanted to make him the sixth man last year, and he realized very quickly he was the best player on the team. Can't really do that.
No.
So I'm excited to see what he can do.
Who's the coach this year?
I think it's still Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, just even this, I found this from January. Here's Rudy Gobert that Ant had no idea his diet could impact his performance on the court. We joke about it, but he had no idea that it could be true. Me, like being annoying every day. When I see him eat something, I say, are you sure you want to be who you want to be? As a player, maybe you got to stop and change that a little bit. Doesn't mean you're not going to eat like I eat right now, but understanding that everything you can do can impact your performance. And I know how much you want to win and be the best. That's according to Gobert. So kind of the idea, like the kid, he's kind of that invincible 22-year-old back in the day when you could eat
Popeyes every night.
Yeah, correct. Fast food. And it didn't impact you because you'd burn that off quicker than you could put it on. And just joking about it earlier this year, maybe that's part of that conversation where he's going to still be busy and have a schedule. But what if a change in the diet in itself is improvement within that chaotic schedule?
I think it's a really good point. I think that is something that comes as you get older and you learn that stuff. I mean, we talk about how old all these great superstars were when they finally won their first title. Yeah. Michael was like 28. LeBron was like 26, 27. Steph Curry, same thing. They're all in their mid to late 20s, usually when it finally hits. Luka's 25. Maybe he'll get his first one this year. It does take some time to figure out you're not invincible, that you're playing amongst amazingly tuned athletes that, if you're run down even a little bit, that's going to even the scale a little. So, yeah, I think that's a
But then you see
really
Luka, man. I mean, Luka's he's having.
I know, right?
He's got like a six-pack,
Well, Jokic, too, for so long. It's the same deal.
Absolutely.
No,
absolutely.
There's something in the waters of Slovenia and Serbia that allow it. They're just built different over there.
Dave, you can carry over another segment.
As long as you need
Yeah,
to.
I appreciate it. Dave Sinykin in the zone. I want to, when we come back, Dave, so I want to talk about the season in totality.
Yeah.
Right? So, we all know what just went down. Let's do a season post-mortem.
Sounds good.
2023, 2024 Timberwolves season when we come back. Welcome back to the feast. It's pretty much all Wolves today. We did a short, 25 minutes Viking segue in the middle, but Dave Sinykin, it's the day after the end of the season.
Yeah, we're doing this tomorrow morning as well. Yep. Yes, for sure.
Hey, let me hit you guys with some Nas audio. Charch sent this to me about 3 a.m. during his dog's second trip outside.
Yeah.
Here's Nas Reed on the season that kind of frames up 2023, 2024 from the sixth man of the year's perspective.
That's something that you dream about, especially just to be in the NBA and then to have that type of love, especially from the team that you were brought in by. I mean, it's super huge, and I'm excited to go into next year. Just to show everybody how hard I work, how hard I'm trying to bring something special to Minnesota again. It means the world, just for all the guys. People got tattoos and, like you said, the beach towels, and then how hard I worked to get 6 man, and that goes to all the fans. I mean, they brought it, and it was huge. Definitely needed that, and it's a big confidence boost as well. Just to, especially when I check in the game, everybody's going crazy. So that's super love, and I appreciate every last person.
Hey, Dave, it kind of reminds me. Maybe this is a bad example. 6 man of the year, Nas Reed, but when your Bucks were making their run. It kind of like Bobby Portis kind of became like this otherworldly fan favorite, where certainly it's Giannis, it's Middleton, it's, Brooke Lopez from the corner, like Drew Holiday in the defense. Like, those were the mainstays. But when he needed something done, you brought Bobby in, and suddenly Fiserv is 200 decibels and everyone's freaking out. He gets a good block, makes a couple of perimeter shots. Like Bobby Portis, I think when your Bucks made that run, kind of like what Nas Reed has meant. Is that a fair comparability spot there?
100%. It's a great parallel. They're very different players, obviously, in what they do. Nas is much more offensive-oriented. Bobby's more defensive. But both of those guys captured the hearts of the fans as kind of bit players.
Yeah.
Like Portis became a much more prominent player as time went along, just as Nas has. And but yeah, it's rare that you find a guy that just gets that a fan base just gets behind out of nowhere. And Nas was that guy, and part of it for him, undrafted, that whole story.
I think that's a lot of it, right? Is we saw him go from an undrafted guy getting no time to then getting a little time,
remade his
better.
body, got way thinner,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
And that work ethic that it takes to get to that point goes along with it.
We appreciate that.
But yeah, it's fun when you have a folk hero kind of develop in front of your eyes, and then we'll talk about this season. There's been a lot of great things about this season. The fairy tale that is Nas Reed is right near the top because it's something everybody can identify with.
At this time last year, Nas was heading into free agency, and I honestly didn't think he'd come back because, Nas had the opportunity to go become a starting center somewhere instead of being a rotational guy here. But for, maybe because of those things you talked about, maybe because the fans love him so much that he's a folk hero here. I mean, he got great money, don't get me wrong.
He did.
And probably similar money that he would have had somewhere else, but he was not going to get the minutes here that he would have gotten for, 20 other teams. So we weren't sure that Nas would be here.
We figured he wouldn't be here. He paid all the money to Gobert into Towns. You can't pay three big guys $15 to $40 million, whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know if maybe the market was soft. He didn't think that he would make a whole lot more than $15 million a year. And you are stepping into a different situation when you're a free agent, and all the coaching and the teammates and how am I going to mesh? It's a very much a question mark. The grass is not always greener. So the fact that the Wolves ponied up whatever it was, $14 a year for 3 years, that's life-changing money. He certainly saw his role possibly being developed here.
Yeah.
And obviously he was coming off a year where Towns had been hurt for so many games that he got that opportunity to show, I'm more than just the 8th or 9th guy on your team. And that's what earned him the money and the trust in the coach's eyes to make him what eventually became the 6th man of the year.
Yeah. So, and that's the great part of this story. Right, Nas played great all season.
He did until last night. Last night was not great.
Until last night, yes.
You're allowed. You're allowed that. He had a couple bad games here in the playoffs, but overall,
just a handful. But he also had some big moments.
He did. No, he's an outstanding.
He helped secure one
player.
of the late wins. It was a game 6 against Denver.
Well, that was a 40-point win, so he didn't need a whole lot of him there.
7,
but yes, he had his moments for sure.
Yeah. I think overall that was certainly one of the positive stories for the season.
There are a lot of positive stories.
So yeah, I mean, without a doubt, it was a fun series. I think most of us that were Wolves fans, I watched most of the games, probably 70 of the 82 regular games.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that's actually, I don't talk about it a lot. I don't tweet about it a lot because I'm not an X's and O's basketball mind. Mm-hmm. I'm just a guy who likes watching basketball, watching the Wolves.
Yep.
I do not watch a random Heat Knicks game. That's not my level. But I watch most of the Wolves games.
That's fine.
And it was a really fun season. I was entertained all year. Didn't end the way I wanted, but I think by any, it was a successful season by any stretch, right?
How could you not? I mean, it's a long season. So to go back to September, October is crazy, but to think of what's the right word? Unease. Is this team going to work with Towns and Gobert? We didn't even see him together last year. Will Ant take that leap in his 4th year? Will McDaniel step into his role? Will Gobert fit with everybody else? Will he be good enough to be the defensive player of the year? Will Conley not fall off a cliff at 36? There were so many questions. And from the start, to see the attention to defense that this team played with and how that can carry you on nights when your offense, and it's not a great offensive team.
Yeah, it's a middle-of-the-pack offensive team.
We know that. They need to address that if they can. And again, there's issues with ownership and salaries, and all that stuff's going to be stuff we're going to talk about over the summer. But the core will be back, and they're going to need to tweak. And one thing they're going to have to tweak is to find a guy or two who can get their own shot, that can hit a three, that when Ant and Cat are being defended and not getting their game on, you've got a guy you can trust to score when you need points. So they're going to have to find that. But
Dave, how do we find legitimate scoring help when we have no meaningful draft picks and we're absolutely jammed on the cap? How are you going to do that?
All right. Well, they do have 2 picks this year, 27 and 37, and you can say they're not
meaningful. I put the word meaningful in there. Those are not picks that generally turn into
maybe not
contributors.
Jaden McDaniel was picked around there in the late 20s.
Let Connolly cook, okay?
Connolly can find guys. He found Jokic in the 2nd round. That wasn't a bad pick.
Turned out okay.
It doesn't always work out. You can't trust that the draft is going to answer your questions. I get your point, but there are also a number of NBA players who will be looking for work. And normally Minnesota is not going to be a place on their list. But if you can say you can play for a championship contender, you're only going to get the veteran minimum no matter where you go. At least Minnesota is going to be on some of these guys' lists now that, hey, they're a couple guys away from maybe winning a title. So if they need a drop-dead three-point shooter, I can give them that. So I'm not going to dismiss that they can't find minimum salary guys. But, yeah, they are way over the tax line. They're Taylor or whoever the owner is, if they keep this core intact, will owe a $75 million luxury tax, just for 1 year. And that's not going to go away because these guys are all signed for multiple years. So is there a stomach for that? Will Taylor pay that? He's only paid it once in all his years as an owner. Not that much, but a luxury tax. But to this level, $75 million. And that's if you keep your top 4 guys because everybody else is signed. Like you've signed Nas, you've signed McDaniels, you've signed, all these guys are up and you're over the limit with 6 guys. And now you got to fill out your roster with minimum salary young guys. And you got to hope that, you get lucky in the draft with a pick or two. Maybe Leonard Miller steps into a role that if Kyle Anderson's not back, I don't think he'll be back. One of these young guys is going to have to step into a role. Maybe it's Miller or Minot. These guys have been on the periphery for a while.
They're not going to be reliable scorers, and we think we need scoring.
Yeah, probably not. Miller's game is intriguing, but no. You're going to want to find for a name out of the hat, Doug McDermott. You know, one of those 3-point shooters that's banged around a few teams, but can knock down a shot when
your Bucks got Kyle Korver.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example.
Suddenly I sound like a Bucks fan. Sorry about that.
No, it's a good call. There are guys like that out there. So, or you guys on your roster have to improve shooting the rock. But no, unqualified success. So my goal, Trent and I talked in September, what's a successful season look like? Like most fans would say, 50 wins, because they didn't get there last year.
Yep.
Be a 50-win team and get out of the first round of the playoffs. Get to that second round for the first time in 20 years. And, you sweep the Suns. You were an underdog in that series. You sweep them. Then you play the champs, and we know the 2-0 start. Now you're down 3-2. Then you take them out in their house in Game 7. That's, sign me up for that. Anything after that's gravy. And now you get greedy. It's like, well, now we're favored against Dallas, and I don't know. I mean, they've never done it. It's been a long time since Dirk Nowitzki was there. And Dallas just proved that they were much more ready for this moment. And it all the end of Game 2 ended the series. For all intents and purposes, the 3 Luka hit to end Game 2, to take that 2-game lead back home, ended the series. They were much better in crunch time, and that's something a young team, first time in this bright light of this moment, wasn't ready for. And hopefully this got them some experience, and they can stay healthy. We'll be in the same spot next year.
I'm glad you did it the way you did, Dave, talking about the 23-24 and just all the questions that were permeating kind of the early stages of the season in September and October. Preseason odds for the Timberwolves to win a championship.
For next year?
66-1.
Oh, for this coming into this year. Wow.
Coming into this year.
Wow.
Yeah, and their over-under for wins was 44.5. I threw some money on that sucker.
They crushed that in February. That was over.
And so defending champions, 4.5 to 1. Celtics, that was kind of, start to finish, they've held that ground. But the Suns were third at 6 to 1. The Bucks, 6 to 1. 12 to 1 for the Warriors. That was a little optimistic. But all the same, you think about the Wolves at 66 to 1. Knicks fans got to be loving Brunson. Preseason, they were 50 to 1. OKC, 100 to 1. Like, you just how this team was perceived, what they had off the 5-game series loss to the Nugs a year ago, to just right out of the gates, as you mentioned it, Dave, every question being answered. And it was absolutely an unqualified success and an amazing season that they had as we get through what we were all forced to watch yesterday.
And the most emphatic question that got answered, and the one that was the most meaningful to everybody listening, will Ant take that step into superstardom?
So he's on the cusp. Do you feel like he's right on the cusp?
He has... To me, now it's a subjective question. To me, he has moved into superstardom territory, not just for what he does to make us go ooh and ah on the court, but how he handles himself off the court, talking about his teammates, answering questions with the media. He has stepped into that leadership role at that young age and somehow threaded the needle for a team that was Karl Anthony Towns' team for all these years, to thread that needle to where, like, I know I'm the guy. I'm going to make Cat understand that he's still really important too.
Yeah.
And Cat to stay on board with that. I
think Cat likes it.
My theory is he needs to like it because he's not a A1 guy.
He's not. No. And I think Cat doesn't want to. I think he labored under the burden of having to be the best player into the team. I think he's relieved to be the second best player on the team.
I don't know. I honestly think part of that maturation process was self-awareness, where he eventually got to that spot. I think Cat has viewed himself. He's spoken about himself as a legend at times, and that kind of stuff has gone away. I think he's grown into that mindset, Charch. But I would say that Dave, his point with Ant is also prescient, because it was Anthony kind of dragging him along, blowing by him like he was tied to a post, as PA would say, in terms of his production, in terms of his leadership and all of that. I think it was almost like a tough look in the mirror and a concession on Cat's part that got him to being able to swallow his new role with the team.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I agree. And I just think, look, we're, as basketball fans, so extremely fortunate to have this young kid on this team.
I know,
to watch
right?
him night after night, because there are just so few guys like that. And as a Bucks fan, Giannis became that guy.
Yeah.
And he's amazing. But it's more fun to watch Anthony Edwards play because of the spectacular and the athletic ability. Look, Giannis is you put the ball in his hands, he goes downhill and nobody can stop him. That's one thing. Ant can do so many different things with the basketball, and he's just figuring it out. And I loved hearing Tom Crean talking with Bump a couple weeks ago about
great interview.
What was spectacular, and I told my son Jackson, you have to listen because he loves Ant more than anything in the world, talking about what a great human being he is, the empathy, that you can't teach empathy. You have it or you don't, and it's how you're raised, it's how the people around you are, and that all helped mold him into be the young man that he is, that he cares about his teammates. It's not just talk. It's not just cliche like, I want to give this guy some love. I'm going to talk. No, that's who he is. It's how he's been since he was a kid. And when you've got that side of you to go with the 1 in a billion talent that you have as well, that's a pretty special guy. You just got to pray for good health for him, for this team. We know there's no guarantee you're going to get this far. There's a lot of great teams in the West and others, young teams that are bubbling up. So the team's going to have to get better, but they learned a lot through this amazing playoff run, which ended spectacularly badly, but does not take away from what they accomplished those first two series and throughout this year, where until the last day of the year, they were the best team of the West virtually the entire way.
Oh, yeah. Almost wire to wire.
Who saw that coming?
And if Cat hadn't gotten hurt, they'd have been the 1 seed.
They likely would have been.
Now, as it turns out, being the 1 seed, I don't think would have changed anything.
Maybe
it
not.
Still would have been home court advantage against Dallas.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I don't. Although maybe you don't have to go 7 deep against Denver.
Maybe,
which really did change. I think the whole tenor of what was left in the tank for the Wolves.
Right, but for a team like this to go on the road and win a Game 7 against the defending champs, as far as just looking as you grow the process, that was invaluable experience going forward to know that they can accomplish that, the confidence, the belief that gives them. It just gives you a lot of hope that this team's figuring things out, and if, again, it's all about good health, but if they're healthy this time of year next year, there's no reason to believe they can't be fighting for another chip.
If I want to hear you and Trent Tucker tomorrow morning, what should I do?
I would tune in at around 8 o'clock. Trent will pop in about 8:01 as the music's playing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At least we can play those bumpers again now.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful
counts for
thing.
a lot.
That does. We'll be on 8 to 10 tomorrow to put a postscript on the amazing Wolves season.
Yeah, absolutely the case. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for having me. Anytime, my man.
Fantastic. We'll shift to Packers in like a month.
I'll be here for
talking about it
whenever you need me.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a fun year in the North. A lot of questions, a lot of intrigue.
It's gonna be fun for your team in the North.
Well, but you got a fun new quarterback to watch.
We won't even see him.
We'll see when he plays.
He's not even going to see the field.
Maybe not. But there's hope. You've got hope going. That's a new start. Turn the corner. We'll see what happens. And the Bears too. Who knows what the Bears are going to be like? But yeah, the Packers with this new defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
and some fun young rookie defensive players and Xavier McKinney. I'm excited that the Pack's defense might look a little different this year.
It feels like that's the only thing holding him back.
I think so. Yeah, the offense should be better.
Yeah,
with all those young guys a year older, and now the Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd backfield. Yeah, I'm excited.
It's going to be fun.
Let's talk now. How much time you got?
Don't tell me. If I had more time, we would. But
sounds good.
We got a while for that.
We do.
All right.
We do.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep. Have a good weekend.
Final segment. We come back.
And
Just a couple minutes remaining, 9 to noon, Charch. I got this text message, Mark in Lakeville, effectively. It's probably something we've all been thinking of over the last few weeks. Who would have thought a deep playoff run from a Minnesota sports team would come from the Wolves? Thought it was a fun season. I think everyone would have thought it maybe would have been the Vikes or possibly the Wild. Although we're going to hear about this Suter-Parisi cap thing. We'll probably, even after that's over, we'll probably still hear
2029, right? Isn't that when it all wraps up?
And something, I think it's one more year. It's just one more year, and then...
I thought there were drips and drabs of that extended all the way to 2029, but maybe the worst of it's over 1 year from now.
And then he puts, the Twins aren't interested in a deep run. The future is bright. It did. I don't want to say it came out of nowhere. They've been to the playoffs 2 consecutive years, but the idea of them getting over the hump, advancing, lending to some positivity there. I've made the joke, once or twice. The Twins are as happy as anybody that the Wolves,
right.
so then they don't have to continually answer questions as to why nobody can watch them.
Because now that becomes the only game in town, right?
Indeed.
Minnesota Aurora playing. Their season has started, I think, last night. So you could do a little Minnesota Aurora if you wanted.
Well, the Lynx are off to a fantastic start this season. PWHL Minnesota. So
they just won. Their season's over.
The ladies handling business. But yes, now they are also on the shelf. They're still.
Do we have a soccer team?
Minnesota United. The Loons, MLS.
Yeah. When does that season start?
They're going
in season now.
A couple of months in.
Okay, all right.
But and they're doing pretty well too. So yes, we have multiple options.
Yeah.
In terms of the core four, though, it is just the Twins right now who. I think they won 7-6 yesterday in the finale, 3 out of 4 against the Royals. So that's good.
That Royals are very good. Well, right? They're unexpectedly good.
I think they're playing above their weight. I think Twins. The Twins are on like a 90-win pace right now, which at one point you were thinking that would win the division.
Be possible.
But they're like 6 games back from the Guardians right now. Guardians are playing out of their minds.
I'm one of those people that I honestly don't know how I can watch. If I want to watch a Twins game, I don't know how I can physically, mechanically even do that right now.
Yeah, it's DirecTV, it's Fubo.
So I'd have to go subscribe to a whole new big service, right?
Correct. Like if you're a YouTube TV guy,
which I am. I'm YouTube TV because they have the NFL Network,
right?
So then I'd have to also subscribe to DirecTV.
Yeah.
And then do I have to pay extra to get the Twins, or will the Twins just be on?
I believe Bally's is just part of whatever that package would be. But yeah, I've had YouTube for years. So whether it was, you can pay separately with the Bally Sports streaming, but the Twins games are not part of that contract. So Wolves and Wild you're in, soccer teams in, Twins games not in. So that thing persists. But the team, at least in more recent times, persisting to win games, which is good. But they are effectively the largest and singular show in town at the moment.
Yeah, Twins. It's Twin season, so hopefully they'll be relevant, and just hopefully people will be able to see that they're not. I mean, you got to go through a lot of work, and I don't know how this is a win for the Twins long term. I can't, and I know this has been talked about a million times. I don't see how making your fans unable to follow your product on television is ultimately a money winner for you.
I would agree with you. I think they'll figure it out.
Yeah, they won't roll into next season like this, right?
Right.
There will be some different solution in place.
There's no way they could do this again. Could they?
Right.
I hope not.
Thanks for all your help today.
Thank you.
I'll see you next Friday.
Absolutely.
And after that, I will see you for the big program password semis.
Yeah, you're going down.
After that.
You and Swedberg, we'll be fine.
Yeah, Swedberg's fine. My side of it is pretty Common Man coming up next. Please stay tuned.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.